Joining us now, House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York.
Well, sir, I know we're going to get to the tariffs in a second, but first, your reaction to what we are seeing now from the bill that Republicans in the House of Representatives have put out from the Ways and Means Committee writ large. This is the bill, if you will, and there are lots of thoughts going around about it. But your reaction, sir, is this what you expected from your Republican colleagues?
Well, good evening. Great to be with everyone. Donald Trump and House Republicans promised that they were going to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. They, of course, have failed to do that. Costs aren't going down. They're going up. So that's a broken promise. Instead, they are trying to enact one of the largest health care cuts in American history, if not the largest. At this point, it looks like $715 billion in cuts to Medicaid that will devastate children and families and seniors and everyday Americans with disabilities. Hospitals could close, nursing homes could shut down. And the reality is, because of this House Republican bill, if it were to pass and become law, people will die. And this is all being done in service of trying to provide a massive tax break to MAGA billionaire donors like Elon Musk and give almost nothing to everyday Americans that Donald Trump and House Republicans promised they would focus on when they lied repeatedly on the campaign trail last year.
Mr. Leader, on Saturday, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget noted the deficit impact of this bill is well above the Ways and Means allowable increase of $4 to $4.5 trillion. So lawmakers are going to need to make adjustments, including offsets and so forth. And you have NBC News noting Speaker Johnson convened a video call on Monday with members, both the Tax Writing Ways and Means Committee and the SALT Caucus group of blue state Republicans to sort of address that. So you have the reality, sir, that they can't control the numbers the way they'd like because of the fact that, to your point, they're going to have to make some steep cuts in areas that they're saying they're not going to make those cuts. And then you have unresolved other issues among the more middle-of-the-road conservative, moderate Republicans on SALT and other issues. How do you see this playing? How does this get shaped in the House ultimately? Particularly if the Democrats decide to go, all right, you guys put your bill on the table and see what happens.
Well, there's a great deal of uncertainty. You have House Republicans fighting with House Republicans fighting with Senate Republicans. They don't know whether to take orders from Donald Trump or Elon Musk or both. The whole thing is in disarray. They've decided to go it alone with this one big, ugly bill and try to jam these far-right extremist policies down the throats of the American people. We'll see what happens this week. We're going to continue to press our case as Democrats that we are defending the health care of the American people. Republicans, of course, are trying to undermine it. And this is not inconsistent with what they've repeatedly tried to do, which is take away health care from the American people. What's egregious about this situation is that it's all being done in service of trying to reward the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. And then, to make matters worse, of course, as you indicated, Michael, they are further adding to our nation's debt and deficit. These people aren't fiscally responsible. They're fiscally irresponsible. They need to stop lying and pretending that the case is otherwise to the American people.
So they released this sweeping tax plan today, except they've not actually dealt with, as Michael sort of referenced there, the real friction point here, which is SALT. Let me read you just a little bit of the reporting. The legislative text currently calls for the SALT deduction cap to be hiked to $30,000 and applies only to those who make up to $400,000 a year. One House Republican close to the process told NBC News there would be enough GOP votes to sink the bill if that SALT figure remains in the final product. I want you to game this out with me. If those Republicans who say that SALT is a deal breaker because they represent districts where that is a deal breaker for their voters. Let's say they fold. Let's say they decide not to hold the line. They vote with Trump on this tax plan, on this budget. Do you currently believe you can flip their seats?
Yes. And these Republicans who have been allegedly advocating to address the situation with state and local tax deduction are all phonies. Understand that in 2017, it was Republicans through the GOP tax scam that imposed the tax cap, the SALT cap, $10,000 on everyday Americans, and as a result have cost people in states across the country, in places like New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and Illinois, Pennsylvania and California, amongst others, thousands of dollars a year in additional costs. That is because of what Republicans did in 2017. And so if nothing were to happen with respect to the state and local tax deduction provision this year, then the cap would go away and they would provide thousands of dollars of additional income to everyday Americans. And so the notion that Republicans are going to try to get away with a $30,000 per year cap, that's not helping middle-class Americans across the country. And these so-called swing seat Republicans in these blue-leaning states will be held accountable next year, and many will lose.
Before we get to the tariffs, Mr. Leader, there is reporting from March 31st in The Guardian that talks about how Republican districts were the ones that have benefited the most from these clean energy spending boosts. This is from the bills that were passed in the Biden administration. The text reads, Republicans who now control Congress have to decide if they will eliminate the IRA's grants and, more crucially, the tax credits that have spurred a boom in clean energy activity in their own districts. A total of 78% of this spending has gone to Republican-held suburban and rural districts across the U.S. That's according to data from Atlas Public Policy. In this current bill that we now know about and scanning through it, there are reductions here that will hit those Republicans in those districts. There's also a severe cut to Medicaid that and I'm just going to read here, the Congressional Budget Office on Sunday night said that 8.6 million people will go uninsured if the health portions of this package become law. Do you have 4 Republicans, 5 Republicans, or any of the 12 Republicans, frankly, that have signed letters indicating that they are concerned about the deficit, or the Republicans that have signed letters indicating that they're concerned about cuts to Medicaid, who are willing to vote with you against this bill? What does your whip count tell you?
Well, that remains to be seen whether these Republicans who have taken all of these public positions, because they are on the run in the communities they represent all across the country, the American people are unhappy with them, and the failure of Republicans to be a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. They're just functioning as a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme policies, but this is going to be the ultimate test. Now, with respect to the clean energy tax credits, and you correctly point out, Simone, that many of the provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, standing up a clean energy economy, creating clean energy jobs, and also cheaper energy, have benefited red districts and red communities and red states across the country. So to vote to repeal these things is a vote to undermine the very constituents that you represent. Now, there were 21 Republicans who signed a letter saying don't touch the clean energy tax credits. Where are those 21 Republicans right now? All it takes is a fraction of them to actually keep their word as communicated to the people that they represent, and the bill will fail. And so you've got challenges with respect to fiscal irresponsibility, challenges as it relates to Medicaid, challenges as it relates to state and local tax deduction, challenges as it relates to the clean energy tax credits. All you need are 3 or 4 Republicans in either the House or the Senate to just keep their word to their constituents, and this bill will fall. We're going to continue to strongly oppose these egregious provisions that don't help the American people, they hurt the American people, and press our Republican colleagues to have some courage and some backbone for their constituents and do the same.
So, you know, the politics here is very interesting. So I love Simone's question because it really just kind of reframes some realities that I think Democrats are going to have to work through. And one of them, and what you're starting to hear on the streets right now, is that the Republicans are doing this sort of artful dodger kind of game where they're now talking about, oh, we're going to increase taxes on the wealthiest Americans, and Trump is floating that out there. And of course, you've got a whole lot of reminiscent playback to "You read my lips, no new taxes" from George Bush 41. But now you have the president also on Monday issuing an executive order asking drug makers to voluntarily reduce the prices of key medicines in the United States. But the order cites no obvious legal authority to mandate lower prices. With his executive order, Trump also opted not to propose measures that could have more teeth in it, such as calling for his administration to work with Congress on legislation or writing regulations to change how government health programs pay for some drugs. That's not the point, right? The point is, hey, I'm cutting drug prices. So do you see politically the Republicans not so much legislatively doing anything with teeth, but rather framing political narratives that make it more difficult for Democrats, as Simone offered up a little bit before, to go after some of those seats that could be on the chopping block otherwise?
Well, they're certainly going to try, but the reality is the core promise that Donald Trump and Republicans made to the American people was that they were going to improve the economy, and they inherited one that was moving in the right direction. The big challenge was the high cost of living in the United States of America. It's a challenge that we need to tackle. They promised that costs would go down on day one, that they would address inflation. Costs haven't gone down, they're going up. Inflation is going up, and a lot of it has to do with Trump's reckless mismanagement of the economy, particularly as it relates to the on-again, off-again tariffs and the mess that he has made with respect to the American economy. And so fundamentally, no matter how much Republicans try to distract from that reality, they will be held accountable for their failure to keep their word, for their failure to lower the high cost of living, and in fact to actually increase costs and make life more unaffordable for everyday Americans. And as you pointed out, with respect to this so-called executive order, it has no force of law. And so it's not a serious effort to lower costs. If there was a serious effort, we'd actually have seen up until this point, more than 100 days into this administration, a single bill that was actually designed to address the high cost of living in the United States of America. Instead, we get legislation to try to rename the Gulf of Mexico.
Leader Jeffries, you referenced tariffs, so I'll allow this to be the last question. China took a tough stance on the threat of increased tariffs from the U.S. They managed to bring that threat down without any real concessions. If you are the Chinese, what have you learned about the art of the deal?
China punked the administration, and the administration backed down. That's no surprise, because we've seen that happen over and over and over again.